Many people accept God exists, however what they cannot deny is that he lives in a city in Brussels with his wife and his little girl EA, who he doesn't treat quite well. Indeed, even before the creation of the world, God was at that point exhausted. So he created Brussels what's more, filled it with animals, yet it didn't work, animals did nothing fascinating. So then he created the first man in his image, who meandered around the city until he met the first woman and got going with her to get civilization started. These days, EA lives with him, yet she isn't permitted to head outside. She's been trapped in that apartment for a considerable length of time. There's absolutely not a chance in or out. She isn't permitted into God's office and it's prohibited to observe everything except sports on television. God's wife is delicate in the head, and never complains about anything. She spends her days weaving blossoms and taking a gander at her baseball card assortment, which comprises of 18 cards. She likewise continues to put a fourth plate on the table when they eat on the grounds that she trusts their son will return. Although God doesn't think he will, EA can do similar deceives her brother did, however God generally chides her for it. Presumably since he's jealous since he can't do them as well. God's ability to control humankind is in a PC in his office. He's a hopeless man, who has never cherished his wife or has at any point had the option to do anything with his hands. So to divert himself from a shabby life, he's made humankind as toys he could observe them suffer and struggle. By causing lots of calamities, he offers a great deal of misery and a little joy to give individuals false expectation. Throughout recent years, he's been writing laws of widespread torment in the back, similar to bread continuously falling with the jam side down and the line you're not on will always move quicker. One evening, God inadvertently leaves the office door open, so EA sneaks inside and investigates the PC, getting incredibly stunned at all the calamity her dad has caused. Later at supper, she calls him out for it, which makes him irate and inspires him to whip her with his belt. Following quite a while of both profound and physical abuse, that is the day EA at long last chooses to help humankind, yet not without causing God to experience first. So the following day, in the wake of preparing her pack, she goes to the figuring in her room that represents her brother JC. Calling out to him is enough for him to awaken, so she asks him for guidance on the best way to continue. JC advises her to get some apostles, however he tried 12, similar to a hockey group, and it got untidy, so all things considered she should get 6, so among her and his apostles they get 18, their mother's number 1 number since it's a ball club. Picking apostles is simply a matter of her getting an inclination, so she can pick 6 peoples from God's documents and afterward essentially intrigue them with just a miracle. She ought to likewise get a brand new testament written. Yet since EA doesn't need people discussing her, JC advises her to make it about the apostles themselves. He additionally reminds her God isn't anything without his PC. At last, to escape, she can utilize the washing machine JC has hacked. Then, EA gets her arrangement moving. She exploits God falling asleep on the couch after drinking a lot to take his key and get into his office. There, she takes 6 arbitrary humankind cards from his file cabinet prior to utilizing the PC to send an instant message to each person in the world letting them know the date of their death. Subsequently, she locks the PC, expresses farewell to JC, and goes to the washing machine, climbing inside to find an extremely lengthy passage that will take her outside. As she crawls through the tunnel, the world responds to the dates in various ways. The news is as of now talking about on the off chance that it's real or not. However, they can't deny there have been an excessive number of coincidences of people dying on time as of now. A woman that just has 2 minutes to leave starts dealing with each conceivable danger in her loft, yet winds up with a cabinet falling on top of her. A janitorial expert becomes popular for being the longest lived man, having 100 what's more, 2 years left to live. A young fellow begins doing perilous things deliberately, in light of the fact that he realizes it won't kill him. A nurse gets upset since she'll live not exactly the older man she's been taking consideration of his time. Many people don't make an appearance at work anymore, and wars have been deserted. A mother that has way less time than her sluggish son doesn't want him to be alone from everyone else and tires to kill him with a pillow. However, he doesn't die because it isn't his time yet. People in social networks are recording themselves doing the thing they've for a long time truly needed to do and never tried to. Back at the apartment, God awakens and figures out what happened because even the games channel is replacing the typical programming with unique news flashes about the current circumstance. Getting irate when he understands he's feeling the loss of his key and EA has locked his office, he snatches an axe and obliterates the door, just to figure out he can't utilize the PC anymore. Yet, he can smell EA's fragrance, so he begins searching for her around the house requesting for her to reboot his PC and even destroying her room door with his axe as well, which permits him to follow her fragrance to the washing machine. Discussing the tunnel, EA at long last arrives at its end, which is inside another washing machine at a laundromat. When she leaves the building, She is astounded by everything she sees and hears because it's her most memorable time outside. It begins raining and she cherishes its sensation. She likewise partakes in the flavor of a burger she finds in the trash, although it makes her hurl. A homeless person named Victor finds her vomiting and tells her it was the fish burger that caused it since they make them out of whales. EA inquires as to whether he can write, and when he says okay, she allocates him as her copyist and asks him to take him to the addresses on the apostles' files, yet he refuses to get involved. This doesn't prevent EA from following him around to convince him, and when she in the end falls asleep, he winds up carrying her, which makes EA wish he had been her father. EA clarifies for Victor some stuff like the reality Earth is heaven, which he doesn't accept since that should come in the afterlife. However, EA lets him know that is not the situation. There's nothing in the afterlife. In the meantime, God concludes he'll need to leave the apartment to find EA. When his wife lets him know it could be perilous for him since he never was out there, he gets irate and begins shouting at her, expressing his disappointment over having lost his control of humankind. They used to act on the grounds that their future was unsure. However, presently they have no trepidation and can decide to do anything they desire with their lives. Assuming she gathers supporters like JC, she could wind up let everybody know how not to be hopeless. What's more, he can't permit that. The wife keeps quiet in her fear, so after yelling at her for being dumb, God enters the tunnel in the washing machine. Victor takes EA to see her first apostle, Aurelie, who subsequent to learning she has 11 years left to carry on with, changed nothing about her life and went on. Not surprisingly, Aurelie lives alone, which is unusual for a lady so lovely. Most men need her. Also, most ladies are jealous of her. However, she lives in a consistent miserable state since when she was a young girl, her arm was torn off by a subway vehicle. So presently she wears a prosthetic. EA gets some information about herself so Victor can write it down for the brand New Testament. So Aurelie tells her a story of when she was moved toward by a vagrant. She had figured he would ransack her or request cash. However, all things being equal, he essentially said life is like a skating arena, many people fall. Aurelie cries as she lets them know how that little bit of reasoning played on repeat in her mind. Furthermore, she recalls that at each time she checks out at herself in the mirror. Subsequent to getting some information about her age and her mother's, EA assembles Aurelie's tears in a little jar since she can't cry. What she can do is hear people's music. So she sets her ear against Aurelie and tells hers is handle, and Baroque writer, and commitments her to send her a decent dream around evening time. Soon thereafter, Aurelie dreams about finding her lost hand moving on her kitchen table. What's more, getting to contact it once more, while strolling towards their next area. EA inquires as to whether he realizes his death date, yet, he doesn't have a telephone. Their subsequent apostle, Jean-Claude, isn't home. When he was youthful, he had an adventurer's soul. However, at that point reality hit him and he needed to work to get by. So he wound up having an exhausting office work at a major organization and getting caught in a discouraging daily practice without a family. In the wake of learning he has 12 years left to leave, he tossed his telephone and briefcase in the trash, then sat on a seat and chose to never ever move in the future. That is where EA and Victor find him. And subsequent to examining the distinctions among fish and birds and people dying from advanced age, EA lets him know his music is Rameau, another Baroque performer. Since she can converse with animals, she lets him know that the bird he's been watching likes him. Furthermore, when he asks as to why it never leaves the park, the bird says it could get some information about him. This extraordinarily stuns him. So Jean-Claude at long last gets up and starts following the bird around. In the interim, God at long last arrives at the laundromat. However, just figures out how to escape the machine after it washes him. There's an old woman there that gets frightened when she sees him and tosses pepper spray at his face, so he runs outside, where he's abruptly hit by the downpour. When he attempts to snatch a burger from the trash can, a gathering of evildoers stops him, saying that is not his to eat and pummeling him for it. God winds up in the hospital, where he drives away and affronts the doctor for contacting his wounds and not giving him morphine. Then he takes a kid's slice of bread with jam, so the mother hits him with her umbrella. For it, the third apostle on the rundown is Mark, who has 83 days left to live and is dependent on grown-up diversion. He doesn't ponder his parents frequently, and when he does, he just recollects the caravan they used to live in. His most significant cherished, lifelong memory is a delightful girl that he saw on the beachfront and wouldn't leave his brain for a long time thereafter. Then, different girls began showing up in his life and he got a pulverize on every one of them. However, he never was fruitful in getting any dates. He had a go at figuring out how to converse with ladies by observing a few internet-based recordings, yet he just put on a show of being a creep. When he found out about his death date, he chose to take out the entirety of his cash from the bank and use it on ladies. First, he paid for an escort, which provided him with the best insight of his life, and presently he's going through each late evening visiting grown-up shows until he hits bottom financially. Subsequent to asking about his family as well and pondering for what reason things aren't free, EA lets him know his music is personal, likewise and Baroque performer. She likewise lets him know he has a pleasant voice and he ought to bring in cash with it. So he winds up working as a voice entertainer for adult films. The entertainer working with him ends up being Xenia, the girl from the beach side. They find an association while talking about writing and return together to his apartment, where they asleep holding hands, back at God's place. The wife discovers a true sense of reconciliation when she at long last will switch off the television, as she is stunned to see the essences of the new apostle are showing up on a copy of the Last Supper. In the meantime, God enters a church that accomplishes noble cause work and winds up getting into a battle with a few vagabonds when he attempts to cut in line. The priest removes him and gives him some food while reminding him he ought to cherish his neighbor as God mentioned. However, God lashes out in light of the fact that he never said that. JC did on the grounds that he conflicted with his dad's derisive wishes. To demonstrate what his identity is, God tells the priest his name and starts bringing up every one of the terrible things that occurred in his life, snickering and reminding him he was the reason. This drives the priest crazy and makes him fire thumping him as the sculpture of JC out of nowhere grins at them. The fourth apostle is Francois, who has a quarter century left to live and calls himself an assassin. The day the death dates went out, he purchased a rifle to fire people with, on the off chance that it wasn't their allocated date. Nothing would occur, however, in the event that they died. It wouldn't be his issue since it was all pre-written. He's been fixated on death since he was a kid. He cherished burial services, in spite of the fact that he was never miserable or cried, and he cherished killing bugs and his cousin's pets. He got married and had a kid, and he felt his work in disaster protection held no importance. EA and Victor find him in the park, and subsequent to requesting that his explanation shoot people, she lets him know his music is Schubert, an old-style writer. Then, she requests that he shoot the woman that is going to cruise by, who ends up being Aurelie. The bullet stalls out in her prosthetic. Yet since Francois and Victor have barely any familiarity with, they believe it's a miracle. Thus Francois starts chasing after her. He will brush his hand against hers in the lift, not understanding it's phony. However, never thinks for even a moment to address her. When he takes a gander at himself in the mirror later, he attempts to deny he's enamored. However, just makes him crush the mirror out of frustration. In the wake of overlooking his family for the evening, Francois visits Aurelie once more, giving her a few blossoms with his number in the lift as he pronounces his adoration for her. Aurelie doesn't reply. However, she brings the blossoms back home with her. As Jean-Claude keeps on pursuing his bird all over the planet, EA visits the fifth apostle, Martine, who has 5 years left. She used to be a heartfelt when she was young, yet she wound up wedding an exhausting man that gave her a dreary everyday practice and looked eased when he heard she would just live for 5 long stretches of his 39. In the wake of finding out about her death date, she recruited an escort. However, the experience wasn't very good and he wound up taking her cash from her purse. EA tells her music matches a bazaar, so they visit one, and their Martine will make an association with a gorilla, which is the most gorgeous thing that has at any point occurred to her and makes her cry. Subsequent to telling her the gorilla says he enjoys her, EA gathers her tears. Martine purchases the gorilla from the carnival master and brings him back home, where EA sleeps on the sofa while Victor sleeps outside. He wants to see the moon prior to sleep to remind himself he isn't in prison for something he didn't do it anymore. The gorilla is permitted to break things around the house and Martine winds up kissing him. Meantime, Aurelie calls Francois and welcomes him over. She shows him the bullet scar on the prosthetic and when she takes it off, he kisses it, a signal that profoundly contacts her. The couple winds up going through the night together. The following day, God attempts to get back to his apartment. However, all the washing machines are obstructed. He starts looking for EA once more and tracks down her close to the river, so he pursues her to inspire her to reboot his PC. EA essentially escapes by strolling on water, and Victor will do likewise by holding her hand. When God attempts it in any case, he sinks. A gathering of men save him and take him to church, where the priest makes them drop him on the same sleeping cushion as a lot of illegal Uzbek immigrants. Jean-Claude continues to follow his bird and its group, and he starts moving his hands to coordinate the herd's developments in a lovely dance. The last apostle is Willie, who has 54 days left. He had forever been debilitated and even got a surgery once, so when he found out about his date, he'd chosen to turn into a girl. In the wake of letting him know his music is Charles Trenet, a jazz musician, and giving him a dream about a singing fish, both of them start hanging out together, effectively making an association in light of their similar age. With the other apostles' assistance, EA provides Willie with an incredible last 7-day stretch of life. It is during that week likewise that Aurelie advises Francois to quit killing, that Martine goes through the night with the gorilla and allows him to drive her husband off, that Mark and Xenia go through the night together appropriately interestingly, and that Jean-Claude comes to the North Pole, where the group shapes a bolt to direct him to a nearby lady. On the last day of the week, God is taken to Uzbekistan with different immigrants while EA and the apostles take Willie to the beach side so he can die at sea. Meantime, God's wife is glad to see the apostles are at long last 18 like a baseball team. And since it appears God won't be returning home, she permits herself to be content. She puts on some music then, moves and sings to it while cleaning. In any event, thinking for even a moment to go to God's office to vacuum the floor. To do as such, she turns off the PC so she can connect the vacuum cleaner, all things being equal. This causes Willie not to die when the opportunity arrives in God's arrangement to begin losing elevation, taking steps to crash on the beachfront. At that point, the wife completes the process of cleaning and associates the PC once more, which reintroduces. The wife sees a message on the screen requesting a password and composes 18. So then, the PC invites her as the goddess. God's plane out of nowhere recovers height and everybody loses the instant message with their life commencement just before the world starts going through serious changes. Goddess utilizes the PC to make a more nicer, more gorgeous reality, where the sky is loaded up with blossoms. People can stroll on the lower part of the sea, gravity is adaptable and the ice covers stop dissolving, paying little mind to a dangerous atmospheric deviation. Presently the television just shows uplifting news consistently. Martine has a child with the gorilla, Victor turns into a famous author by distributing the brand New Testament, EA and Willie have their most memorable kiss together, and Francois gets pregnant with Aurelie's child. Meantime, God is stuck in a Uzbek factory, where he checks each washing machine, hoping for an exit plan. The end. If you like this story, please subscribe to the channel and like it to motivate me to bring you more stories like this.